Hello, and welcome back. This is the Blockrora podcast.
Good to be here.
Yeah, it's Friday, February 20th, 2026. We are deep in the first quarter. The markets are doing their usual chaotic dance, and I think everyone is trying to figure out what the next 12 months of tech integration is actually going to look like.
Definitely.
But today we're doing something a little different for this deep dive. We're pivoting to look at a sector that is usually treated as a lagging indicator of technology.
Yeah, nonprofit world.
Right, the nonprofit world. But according to the data we have on the desk today, this sector has suddenly jumped to the absolute bleeding edge.
It is a really fascinating inversion. I mean, usually when we talk about high-speed tech adoption, we're looking at fintech or high-frequency trading on the blockchain or decentralized logistics networks.
Yeah.
But the reports we have today, specifically the 2026 Nonprofit AI Adoption Report, this is from Virtuous and Fundraising.AI. This report suggests the nonprofit sector is currently the best mirror we have for the state of global AI. It's showing us exactly what's working and, honestly, more importantly, exactly what is broken.
And the mirror is not entirely flattering, is it? The headline numbers here are confusing at first glance. We're seeing what looks like a massive success story, but when you peel back the layers, it exposes a structural problem that I think applies to every single listener.
Absolutely.
Whether you run a soup kitchen, a decentralized hedge fund, or a Fortune 500 logistics team.
It's the efficiency plateau. That is the core theme of this deep dive today.
Yeah.
It's the wall that organizations hit when they buy the tools, but they don't actually change the behavior.
Let's break down the data paradox first, because the adoption numbers are just staggering. The report cites that 92% of nonprofits have integrated AI into their daily operations.
92%.
Yeah. In 2026, that is effectively saturation. That is higher than some commercial sectors. If you saw that number on a pitch deck for a new Web3 protocol, you'd say the revolution is over and the robots won.
You would. I mean, if you just read the headline, you'd think the transition is totally complete. Everyone has the tools. But here is the catch, and it is statistically pretty violent. Only 7% of those organizations report that AI has actually transformed their mission capability.
Wait, 7%.
7%. So 92% are using it. But nearly all of them, 93% of that group, they aren't getting any real transformative value out of it.
That is a massive disconnect between activity and utility. It essentially suggests we are all incredibly busy, but we aren't necessarily productive.
That is the plateau right there.
Right.
The report argues that the vast majority of these organizations are using AI as a high-powered digital intern.
A digital intern. I want to drill down on that phrase because I think we've all fallen into this trap.
Well, for sure.
You use the LLM to polish an email, maybe summarize a Zoom transcript, or draft a quick social media post, and it feels like work, but is it?
It's work, but it's totally surface level. In the productivity hack, it saves you 20 minutes on a Tuesday. But does polishing an email cure a disease? Does summarizing meeting minutes actually feed a family? No, it's maintenance. You're just doing the exact same old work, slightly faster. Real transformation, that elusive 7%, it's about structural change. It's about doing things you physically couldn't do before the tech existed.
So the mission of this deep dive is to figure out how to bridge that gap. How do you go from being part of the 92% who are just tinkering to the elite 7% who are actually evolving? And the answer in the data is surprising.
Very.
Because the organizations bridging that gap aren't the ones you would expect.
This is actually my favorite data point in the entire set. Conventional wisdom says technology is a resource game, right?
Yeah.
The big players, the tier 1 NGOs, the global charities with massive endowments, they should be winning.
Because they have the IT departments.
Exactly. They have the dedicated CTOs, the server farms, the enterprise blockchain contracts.
But they are lagging. The data shows they're getting beaten by the little guys.
They are losing significantly. The data shows that small nonprofits organizations with under 50 staff members are reporting moderate to high impact at a rate of 41%. The large organizations are trailing at 34%.
That feels really counterintuitive until you start thinking about coordination complexity. I assume this is basically the corporate equivalent of too many cooks in the kitchen.
It's exactly that, but with legal and compliance involved. Think about it. If you are a massive global charity and you want to deploy a new AI agent to handle donor data across 3 continents, think about the friction there.
That would be a nightmare.
You have governance reviews, legal compliance, GDPR checks in Europe, legacy database integrations from the 1990s, and probably a steering committee that only meets once a quarter.
It's like turning an oil tanker. By the time they actually approve the pilot program, the software version they're testing is obsolete.
It's exactly. Meanwhile, the local community center, with 12 employees, they have a meeting on Tuesday, decide to pivot, and by Wednesday morning, the new system is live. In 2026, agility is proving to be a much more valuable currency than endowment size.
Because they can absorb risk.
Right. They don't have a 100-year reputation to protect in the exact same way.
And it's not just that they are faster, they are doing something fundamentally different with the tech. Which brings us to the concept of agentic AI. We need to unpack this because agentic is the buzzword of the year.
It really is.
But in this context, it has a very specific operational definition that separates it from what we were doing in, say, 2024 or 2025.
It's the shift from generative to active. For the last few years, we've been super impressed that a computer can write a poem or generate an image. That's generative. Agentic AI is a system that can execute a chain of tasks in the real world without a human approving every single step. It has agency within a set of guardrails.
The article breaks this down with a specific example of a local food bank that I found incredibly compelling. It moves way beyond just chatting with a bot to actually running complex logistics.
Right. So imagine the old workflow. A volunteer sits at a phone, calling supermarkets to ask if they have expiring produce. It's slow, it's manual, and it misses opportunities because the volunteer can only make maybe 10 calls an hour.
Right.
The agentic approach replaces that entirely. The AI agent digitally connects to the inventory APIs of local partners.
So it's just constantly pulling data in the background.
It scans the inventory. But here is the agentic part. It doesn't just generate a report saying Whole Foods has bananas. It identifies the surplus. It automatically triggers an SMS workflow via a platform like Twilio to the nearest volunteer drivers. It routes them to the pickup using map data, and it updates the food bank's inventory system.
And the key detail here?
No staff member touched a keyboard.
That is wild.
The entire loop discovery, coordination, execution was completely autonomous. It's basically functioning like an off-chain smart contract, executing conditions in the real world seamlessly.
That is the leap from digital intern to institutional infrastructure. The intern writes the email about the bananas. The infrastructure goes and gets the bananas.
Spot on. And that connects perfectly to the sidebar headline we saw regarding OpenAI acquiring OpenClaw to target autonomous personal agents. The nonprofit sector, specifically these small, nimble local hubs, are acting as the testbed for these autonomous agents.
Because they have to.
Exactly. They have this desperate need for efficiency that entirely overrides the fear of letting go of the steering wheel.
That's a crucial point for anyone listening in the tech space. They aren't doing this because it's a fun experiment. They're doing it because they are operating on a shoestring budget. If you can automate the logistics, you free up the humans for the actual human work. But that brings us to a major tension in the source material. Because when you talk about human work in a nonprofit, you're often dealing with highly vulnerable populations.
This is where strategy meets ethics. The report discusses this concept of hyper-personalization at scale. Now, on one hand, this is an absolute miracle for operational capacity.
How so?
Well, say you run a refugee support center. An AI agent can provide instant multilingual support to thousands of people simultaneously. It can guide them through complex legal forms in a dialect that maybe only a few thousand people even speak globally.
A human caseworker simply cannot do that. The math just doesn't work. So in that sense, the AI is providing access and dignity through speed. It democratizes the support.
It does. But the counter-argument is fierce, and we really have to look at it objectively. Candid released a series called Back to Human, and they warn about the AI literacy gap.
The literacy gap.
Yeah. There is a real operational risk that organizations are going to optimize for their own efficiency at the direct expense of the user experience.
Right, you replace the intake staff with a cold algorithm. If I'm in crisis or I'm not tech literate, or honestly, if I just need someone to look me in the eye and say, it's going to be okay, a chatbot, no matter how advanced it is going to feel like a massive failure of the mission.
Exactly. It's the IVR phone tree hell of the 2000s, but with way higher stakes. You do not want a homeless veteran shouting, "Representative," at a digital kiosk. That isn't efficiency. That is alienation.
So what's the strategic synthesis here? If you're running one of these organizations, or frankly, if you're building tech for them, how do you balance the agentic efficiency with the human requirement?
The consensus across the articles we analyzed is that you have to be ruthless about where you apply the automation. The best organizations are using AI specifically to handle the back office data heaviness. They use it to strip away the paperwork, the complex scheduling, the compliance reporting, the grant writing.
So the staff isn't being replaced, the staff is being liberated.
Ideally, yes. You remove the administrative cholesterol that clogged the arteries of the organization, so the blood, which is the human empathy and face-to-face interaction, can flow to where it's actually needed. The tech handles the data. The humans handle the humans.
Administrative cholesterol. I am absolutely stealing that. But let's look at the risks of doing this wrong. We mentioned earlier that small organizations are moving fast, but speed usually breaks things. And the governance stats in this report are actually quite alarming regarding security.
They are terrifying. 47% of the nonprofit sector still lacks an AI policy.
That seems totally negligent for 2026. That is nearly half the sector flying blind.
It's the Wild West effect. And this links directly to that Block-Rora headline we pulled about shadow AI.
Ah, yes, shadow AI and the rise of the invisible enterprise attack surface. It sounds incredibly dramatic, like a cyber thriller, but in practice is actually very mundane, isn't it?
It's mundane, but lethal. Shadow AI isn't some hacker in a hoodie breaking into your mainframe. It's your well-meaning program director pasting a list of donor names into a public chat bot to format it because they're in a hurry and they don't have a better enterprise tool.
Oh, wow.
Or it's a volunteer using an unvetted third-party agent to sort sensitive medical files.
And suddenly your private beneficiary data is just out there as training data for a public model. The data has permanently left the building.
Precisely. The argument the source makes, and I think this is critical for literally any leader listening to this deep dive, is that governance isn't about red tape. Governance is safety.
It's creating a sandbox.
Exactly. If you give your team a clear data privacy policy and approved enterprise tools that securely ring-fence the data, they can run fast without blowing up the organization. Without it, you are basically operating an invisible attack surface.
So, we have the small hubs winning, we have the severe risk of shadow AI, and we have this clear mandate to move toward agentic workflows. But practically speaking, how do you break the plateau? The article offers a strategy called the Tuesday problem.
This is hands down the best piece of practical advice in the stack today. It's the ultimate anti-height strategy. The Tuesday problem simply asks, what makes your team miserable on a Tuesday afternoon?
The boring stuff. The absolute grind.
The incredibly boring stuff. Invoice processing, rescheduling volunteers who canceled at the last minute, reformatting spreadsheets because one donor used a PDF and another used a decentralized ledger and a third used Excel.
Right.
The efficiency plateau exists because people are using AI for creative tasks like write me a fundraising appeal or design me a logo instead of the drudgery.
Which is completely backward. We should be using humans for the creative appeal and AI for the spreadsheet reformatting.
Exactly. The real transformation happens when you automate the drudgery. And the source suggests moving from personal hacks to shared workflows. This is a huge shift in mindset.
This addresses the classic bus factor. We all know that one guy in accounting who is an absolute wizard with prompts. But if he quits to join a Web3 startup, the magic leaves with him.
Right. Organizations need to start treating their prompt libraries and agent configurations like actual company assets. If you figure out a way to automate the volunteer schedule, that shouldn't live in your head. It should be documented code or a process that belongs to the institution. It needs to be repeatable infrastructure.
Okay, so we have the roadmap. Solve the Tuesday problem, document the workflows, automate the back office. Now comes the really hard part. The part that usually kills innovation dead in its tracks in the nonprofit sector.
Funding.
Exactly. How do we pay for this?
Well, follow the money. And this is where the landscape in 2026 is shifted radically from even 2 years ago. The funding models are finally adapting to the reality of the tech.
Because it used to be all about buying software licenses. It was always, here is a grant for Microsoft Office, or here is money to upgrade the server room.
Which is completely outdated now. Software is becoming commoditized. It's cheap. The expensive part now is implementation. It's the data cleanup. It's the training. And the major funders have finally woken up to this reality.
The report highlights the FM Kirby Prize and the OpenAI People First AI Fund. What exactly makes them different from the legacy grants?
Unrestricted capital. They are providing funding that essentially says, look, we know you can't build a hyper-efficient AI agent on top of a messy, fragmented database from 1998. So here's the money to clean your data. Here is the money to hire a consultant to map your workflows.
That is huge. No one ever wants to fund database cleaning. It is the least sexy thing on the planet. You can't put a brass plaque on a clean SQL database.
You can't. but it's the foundation. Without clean data, agentic AI is just a chaos engine. It will make mistakes faster and more confidently than a human ever could. You also have the AWS Imagine grant offering Pathfinder awards. This is $200,000 in cash, plus $100,000 in computing credits specifically for generative AI.
That's serious infrastructure money. That's not just buying a monthly subscription, that's building a custom backend.
It signals a massive shift. Donors now view AI fluency as a legitimate capacity-building expense. Investing in your team's ability to use these agents safely is just as fundable as building a new wing on a hospital. It is widely recognized as critical infrastructure.
So the tools are democratized. The funding is available, if you know where to look. The final piece of this puzzle is how we measure if it's actually working. The article argues that we're currently measuring the wrong things entirely.
This brings us to the measure mission, not just minutes concept. It's a trap everyone falls into. You implement a new tool, you save 15 hours of staff time a week, and you declare total victory.
But the article asks, so what?
Right, so what? If you save 15 hours and you just go home early, or you fill that time with more low-value administrative busy work, you haven't transformed the organization at all. You've just hit the plateau. You are efficient, but you aren't effective.
The transformation is in the reallocation of that time.
Precisely. Success isn't saving 15 hours. Success is taking those 15 hours and turning them into a 20% increase in beneficiary outreach. It's about reinvesting the time dividend back into the core mission.
That really brings it full circle. The small organizations are winning because they literally have to reinvest that time. They're so resource constrained that every saved hour is immediately poured back into survival and growth. They don't have the luxury of just sitting on the efficiency.
And that is the harsh lesson for the big players. You have to manufacture that urgency internally. You have to demand that the saved time goes somewhere meaningful, or else you're just paying for a very expensive digital nap.
It's funny, sitting here talking about this, I actually feel a little called out. We use AI heavily to help with research, to transcribe the interviews, to organize the structure of the show. But are we actively using that saved time to make the content deeper? Or just to finish the workday earlier?
It's a totally valid fear. We are all at risk of becoming digital interns to our own tools if we aren't careful. We let the tools set the pace instead of the mission setting the pace.
So let's wrap this up for the listener. We've looked at the stats, 92% adoption, but only 7% true transformation. We've walked through the rise of agentic AI and the distinct advantage of the local hubs. We've covered the funding shift to unrestricted capital and fixing the Tuesday problem. What is the final verdict here?
The verdict is that the barrier to entry is gone. Technology is no longer the bottleneck. Funding is no longer the bottleneck, again, if you know where to look. The barrier is entirely mindset. It is the willingness to look at your organization and refuse to just pave the cow paths.
Pave the cow paths.
It's an old urban planning term.
Yeah.
Don't just pour asphalt over the messy, wandering paths the cows made decades ago. Build a highway. Don't just automate the messy way you're already doing things. The year 2026 is about doing new things. If your AI strategy is just doing faster email, you are completely missing the revolution.
And you're likely going to get lapped by a community center with 4 employees and a really solid parental library.
Guaranteed. The speed of change is just too fast to stand still.
That is a very powerful place to leave it. The tools are in your hands, the funding is out there, but you have to be willing to break the plateau. If your AI is just doing what you used to do, but faster, you're running in place. 2026 is about doing entirely new things.
Couldn't agree more.
If this deep dive sparked some ideas for you, or if it made you realize you need to go draft a data privacy policy immediately to stop your shadow AI, we want to hear about it.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe and visit blockroar.com for more.